Hellenistic Greece. Alexander the Great was dead. Poisoned, most whispered, and the frantic killing of his physician seemed to confirm it. In Babylon, the heartbeat of his empire, chaos rippled. The conqueror of Persia, in the prime of his life at 32, had fallen with no heir. His son had died young, and Alexander, ever cautious, had named no successor. His generals, the Diadochi, eyed one another with suspicion as Babylon's streets buzzed with rumors. 4 days, the city hung on a knife's edge, poised for bloodshed as his inner circle debated who might claim his legacy. Finally, they reached a tenuous compromise. The vast empire that Alexander had carved out would be split into 4. Cassander took Macedon, the homeland, its warriors proud but weary from years of campaigns. Antigonus seized Anatolia, standing on the shoulders of his predecessor. Ptolemy crowned himself pharaoh in Egypt and spirited away Alexander's body to Alexandria, a gesture that echoed his ambitions to immortalize his fallen king. And finally, Seleucus, a lieutenant whose popularity had grown in the east, claimed Mesopotamia, a land of ancient secrets and veiled powers. Yet even as the Diadochi solidified their realms, a subtle unease persisted. The knowledge Alexander had sought in the distant corners of the world, pieced together by his brilliant mentor Aristotle, remained elusive. Aristotle, revered not just as a philosopher but as one of the keenest minds of any age, had nurtured the dream of recovering the truths of the ancient world. He had not only mentored the young conqueror, guiding him with visions of empire, but he had also ignited the search for lost knowledge, commissioning the great Library of Alexandria to uncover the mysteries buried by time. Though even Aristotle knew that his quest had barely scratched the surface of what had once been. In Alexandria, the torch of this pursuit burned brightly. The library drew scholars from every corner of the known world, all eager to unravel the fragments of wisdom that remained. It was here, amidst its shelves, that the Old Testament biblos began to coalesce, as scholars sought to rebuild the shattered understandings of a world that had once known greatness before the collapse of 609 BC, the fateful Armageddon. That catastrophe had erased empires, and the survivors had built new ones upon its ruins, but shadows remained. Knowledge, guarded fiercely by those who understood its power, was now hidden behind layers of secrecy. For a time, this new Hellenistic world flourished. Alexander's reforms, driven by a vision of equality, had shaken the financial systems that dominated earlier ages. He had sought to make wealth accessible, instilling a form of economic order that was more socialist, a leveling force among his people. This push had ignited the golden age that followed, as trade spread wealth more evenly across the vast territories. The rise of Alexander's socialist system facilitated exchange and growth, and the cities flourished. Science, art, philosophy each reached new heights as the Hellenistic world thrived on a foundation built, in part, by Alexander's radical changes. But change is fragile, and greed, eternal. Beneath the surface of prosperity, the old currents of power shifted. The great forces that had survived Armageddon had never truly disappeared, their influence extending invisibly, yet undeniably, into the new age. The Library of Alexandria, with its obsessive gathering of knowledge, was a threat. Every book collected, every scroll copied, brought the world closer to truths long kept hidden. Some secrets, they believed, were too powerful to be revealed to the people, and forces moved quietly to contain them. The first Ptolemaic kings had committed to knowledge and learning, enforcing laws to collect every text that entered the harbor. But as generations passed, this would change. It started subtly. One of the oldest strategies was quietly introduced again. Ptolemy II, in the proud tradition of royalty, married his sister, Arsinoe, in a move that began to unravel the intellectual and moral fiber of the dynasty. The ancient playbook was followed once more. The minds that once thrived under the rule of the early Ptolemies weakened, and Alexandria's golden age began its slow descent. By the time of Ptolemy VIII, the intellectuals who had once flocked to the library were expelled, and the city of knowledge fell into ruin. The light that Aristotle and Alexander had once kindled was slowly extinguished. Though the beauty of the Hellenistic age remained for a while longer, its art, poetry, and philosophy still legendary, its core had begun to rot. The great powers of the past, though barely glimpsed by the men who now ruled, began their work once more. Division, infighting, and greed consumed the Diadochi. Antigonus sought more power, launching the Diadochi Wars in 310 BC against Seleucus, whose territories he coveted. The battles were fierce but tactical, as old alliances forged under Alexander still held some weight. Seleucus, with the help of Ptolemy, held firm, expanding his empire and solidifying the foundations of the Seleucid realm. But even as these new empires grew, the old influence persisted, patient, knowing that time would do its work. The victories were fleeting. The balance of power among the generals began to crumble, and with each war, the four great kingdoms of Alexander's empire weakened. From the west, a new enemy loomed: Rome. Soon, the brilliance of the Hellenistic age would clash with the brutal efficiency of Roman conquest. And as this era of brilliance and wonder dimmed, so too did the hopes of unraveling the ancient knowledge Aristotle had so fervently sought. The veil that had descended after Armageddon remained impenetrable, and the rulers of the earth, distracted by their own desires, could no longer see what had once been in their grasp. The blues, whose touch had faded with Alexander's rise, had begun their work again, weaving themselves back into the story.